Welcome, everyone. Thank you all for being here. Again, today we are talking about Return to Bloom, the language of flowers. As many of you know, this is a favorite topic of mine. And so I know that we will have great fun. So, to begin, as I always begin, my name is Renee Ifakbaye Eshupola Ayalad Begbesina, Tinawawe Oshundumola Ike. I am the daughter of Maureen and Dr. Richard Smith, of Stephen Tyson. I am the granddaughter of Violet Chevalier, of Jacob Chevalier, of Burdell Anderson, and of Cecil Smith. I am the great granddaughter of Lucille Benoit and Eddie Benoit, of Tyson Vickers and Estelle Vickers. And I always introduce myself in that way because I do not stand here alone. Those who came before paved the way so that I can do this work. And I pray that the work that I do will also pave the way for those who come after. So I really thank you all for being here today. And we're going to get into it and talk a little bit more about flowers and why flowers. So people ask me all the time, yeah, why flowers? Why flowers? And I will say that one of the discoveries that I had for myself in this process has been that flowers really tell us a lot about who we are, what season of our life we're in, and what type of intelligences we need at that time. And most people will be like, it's just a flower, right? It's just a flower. Flowers really give us an insight into the plant world. And as much as we love them, as much as they help with the ecosystem, they also are messengers. And specifically during this time when we're in springtime, we're moving out of sacred rest, we're starting to feel and understand the frequency of spring, we are now also being able to bloom in and of ourselves and use this energy and this frequency as we move towards awakening and then also manifesting our dreams and goals as we move towards the summer solstice. So I am extremely excited to be here with you all. And we are going to go ahead and get started. I'm going to change this so it's a little bigger. So as I shared, welcome. This is not a space where we can be our full selves. So this is not a space to judge. It's a space to learn. It's a space to become curious about yourself. One of the things that we talk about in emotional alchemy is that curiosity is an emotion, right? And we have been taught many times not to be curious. And so this is an opportunity for you to be curious about not just what you understand about flowers, but what you understand about yourself, because we work within an ecosystem that is a reflection of self. That is what the flowers do. And so this is an opportunity for us as a community to reflect on who we are and who we're becoming. So today is really about a return, right? I always talk about ancestral intelligence and the idea that most of it is really about remembering. It's not that we're learning something new, but we're unlocking a different part of how we understood or our capacity to understand. And as a result, we're changing our perspective about the way in which we walk in the world. So today we're going to talk about and use your intuition, right? What is that quiet voice that calls you to certain flowers, that calls you to certain spaces? And why does that happen? Where do you have sensitivity, right? Honoring your own capacity to feel and perceive and to receive, understanding your sensitivity. And then thirdly, we're going to look at a natural rhythm, right? So we're going to move and talk about things as they naturally come up. You all are going to constantly share with me. I'm going to ask you to share in the comments. I'm going to read back the comments. And as I do that, we're also going to have this opportunity to be in a natural rhythm as we're learning together. So the first thing I wanted to point out is that today is really significant because we are also not only in the energy of spring, but we have just come through the new moon and it's in Aries. Our ancestors, our indigenous folks have always paid attention to the phases of the moon and what they do and how our bodies and how the plants respond, right? There are certain plants that you only pick during a new moon. There are certain plants that you only pick during a full moon. There are certain plants that only get used in flower essences when they're sitting under the moon. So the sun and the moon are very, very important to our understanding, right? Because we aren't living by ourselves alone in our own bubble. We're living inside of an ecosystem that is also moving and shaping. And the moving and shaping of that energy is also influencing the way that we are able to show up in the world. So, this new moon in Aries, as you know, new moons are always about new beginnings, right? It's about this idea of a new cycle, a fresh cycle. It's when the moon cannot be seen because it's getting ready to move into this new cycle for this next season. So it's a great time for setting intentions and being aligned with your becoming. And this is a perfect time to do it because as we're talking about flowers, as we're talking about these tools, we're able to put those two things together. And that moon energy lasts for a couple of days. So I always tell people the last full moon, I will be honest, it almost took me out. I started feeling it almost a week ago. And then a week before it happened, and it took almost a week and a half before it actually subsided. But it was also a super moon. So these are the things that we have to always pay attention to and know that as we become more curious about ourselves, as we awaken and begin to align ourselves with those frequencies, we're going to start to be able to feel the earth having changing. So I remember like there are many times, especially now in the last 2 or 3 years, where the solstices and the equinoxes have been extremely enlightening for me because I remember going into the winter solstice and saying, I literally can feel the earth going to sleep. Like all of my cells was like, oh, it's time to sleep. I had to slow myself down because I was used to constantly going and my body was just like, we can't do this. And so you'll realize that you will begin to have this sensitivity as you move forward. We also want to call in this new moon. We want to call in this idea of courage, right? Courage, right? This idea of initiation that Aries calls you forward into action, into voice, into visibility. This is the beginning of the zodiac. And so it's important for us during this time to think about what we want to be courageous about. What do we want? What part of our voice, what part of our person have we not been allowing ourselves to be seen? And it's time that the world sees us. And I'm not saying the world in terms of social media. I'm not saying the world in terms of performative, but I'm saying us being vulnerable and courageous enough to share that part of ourselves because that gift is needed at this time. Personal power, right? Being able to reclaim our agency, being able to know that this moment is emerging and everyone who is here, everyone who is participating because this is an intention, right? That the universe is bringing us together in this time to be a part of this. So one of the things I want you to think about, thinking about the new moon energy and thinking about Aries and then thinking about springtime is what are you ready to begin? What are you ready to begin? What is quietly ready to emerge? So take a moment to think about that, right? Take a moment to continue in that process. Take a moment to let that guide you through everything that you are currently working on and sitting in this moment with yourself. What are you ready to begin? Or what is quietly ready to emerge? So this idea of blooming, right? Blooming is becoming. We've had this conversation before. Part of the hardest part of becoming is that we don't know what it is, right? So there is no blueprint for it, right? And so we have to trust whatever is coming up is also what needs to come forward. And so a bloom doesn't just happen in that single moment, right? It happens cumulatively. Everything that we put into, every intention we put into that becoming is what actually blooms. So it includes resting, it includes nourishment, it includes patience, and the idea that it's slow and steady, right? That we're constantly doing something consistently. You know, they say 30 days to build a habit, 90 days to change your lifestyle. So it's really this opportunity to say, if I say that I want to be intentional about rest, that I am going to now put that in my calendar to go to bed at a certain time, to wake up at a certain time, to continue my meditations at a certain time. These are the things, these are the small intentional moments that we create that cumulatively become a part of our becoming, right? It's not force, it's a choice that we make, right? Because we get to choose. It's a choice that we make that allows us to create that for ourselves. And then what does it mean to be in a season of bloom, right? We're emerging after rest, right? Winter and winter solstice, I always say it's about sacred rest. So our bodies and our minds are in this space of conception. We may be conceiving things that we want to bring forward in the next season, right? We have gone from stillness to literally, some of us 90. Some, we got to find the in between. It probably needs to be a 30 at some point, right? So we have to figure out how we're moving in a steady way, in a steady pace that will help us to really bring forth what we're blooming, right? We're going into visibility after stillness, right? So to bloom is to be seen. You know, think about when a flower blooms. A flower doesn't bloom so that nobody sees it. A flower blooms so that you can be seen. So the thought is that we're going from this idea of stillness to visibility, that in our circles, in our work, in our relationships, in our creative endeavors, that we're moving from a place of stillness, of conception, of into actually bringing it into the world, that people are going to see it and they're going to see you. And you having a choice to decide whether it is going to be harsh or if you're going to come into to it softly, right? Think about a flower blooming, right? We'll talk about the energy of blooming because the energy of blooming is so incredible. It takes so much energy to bloom. It takes so much energy to bloom. However, flowers make it look so easy, right? And so this is an opportunity for us to really think about, when we think about visibility, when we think about how we want to be seen, we get to write it. We get to choose. Even if people are used to or have married themselves to old selves of us, it is okay to bloom in a different way, right? So you get to choose how you want to show up. You get to choose soft, bold, your own terms, what you want to receive, meaning the reciprocity in your relationships, but also how you want to be treated. What are the things that you're going to do for yourself so that you're able to continue in this blooming season? The other piece is that during the season, we have expansion with intention, right? It's not scattered growth. When you plant a seed, the seed doesn't put part of itself here in the dirt and then part of itself over there and then part of itself on the other side. It all grows together, all together with great intention. It's very purposeful. So I want you to also think about the things that we're working on blooming. How are they connected? How are they connected to yourself? How are they connected to your community? How are they connected to your overall visibility and goals? Right? So that all of these pieces are coming together and they're unfolding because you are curious about yourself and you're allowing yourself to be visible. But also in this unfolding, it's unfolding from a place of truth. It's unfolding from a place of trust. It's not going to just show up any which way. So this is really a great time to think about how your intentions and action are also going to allow you to bloom. Let me know if any of this is resonating. I see Mama Deborah says, yes, there's a lot. A lot is blooming right now. So when we talk about plant intelligence, some of you have done some of this lecture with me before, but for those, this is your first time, I always go back here. So when we talk about nature, when we talk about plants, I like to talk about them from the idea of intelligence, right? That there is plant intelligence. Everything on earth has intelligence, right? Water has intelligence, plants have intelligence, animals have intelligence. However, the way in which that intelligence shows up is based on what we've been designed to do, right? How we understand it and what we as humans, being the ones who in the ecosystem have choice. Now, the other thing that I always like to say is in the ecosystem on the totem pole, we as human beings, we always like to think we're at the top of the totem pole, but we actually are not. We actually are not the highest frequency that's happening. We happen to be the ones who can choose, right? So unlike a cockroach can't say tomorrow, I want to be a butterfly. A hippo can't say tomorrow, I want to be a giraffe. They don't have that kind of choice in terms of their own evolution. They come with a certain purpose, they come in a certain body. We, on the other hand, we have the ability to choose. We have the ability to choose whether or not we're going to evolve or not, right? And our evolution is really about higher thinking and our higher order and the way in which we connect into that ecosystem. Plants are actually the ones who have the highest frequency within the ecosystem. Baba Malidoma Somé used to talk about the fact that plants are having their frequency is so fast, their frequency is so ancient that many times we as humans interpret it as stillness. But we know that plants aren't still, right? Because you can do a time lapse of a plant and you can watch it moving. And as you water it, as it flowers, all of those things are happening. So we know that it exists. And I always like to say intelligence is a sign of a couple of things. One is adaptability, right? Our ability to see adaptation. And when you think about the plants that you see, right now is a great time. You go outside, you feel the trees are bubbling, you feel the buds are coming out, you see all of these plants moving. There's a frequency of actually moving into this idea of blooming. But when you think about what you're seeing, right? When you walk outside and you see a tree, when you walk outside and you see a flower, what you are seeing now exists because it is from the first seed of time. I'm going to say that again. What exists exists because it is from the first seed of time. Okay, wonderful. So I believe I know what I was speaking about. So plants have the highest frequency. We tend to think that they are still, but because they are vibrating so high, they appear still, but they're not still, right? Specifically because we know that if we time lapse a plant, we'll be able to see them moving. We know that there are actual trees in certain parts of indigenous spaces that actually walk. They call them walking trees because their roots go deep, right? The mitochondrial underneath that the network that they have will actually have it look as though they are walking. They're moving from one place to the other over time. So we know that intelligence is, you can mark intelligence by the ability to adapt, right? And we know that plants adapt. This ability for us to see its physical intelligence, meaning the roots know when soil is good. The roots will track, or the plant itself will track sunlight. It will bloom and respond in very specific seasons. And we'll know that it's doing well because it'll tell us, right? Based on the environment where it is. That is one of the ways that we know. We also know that plants have intelligence because they're used in many different ways, meaning there's spiritual intelligence. It's not just about what it can do for us, but also throughout the world, there is a spiritual understanding with all of these flowers, right? There's a spiritual understanding with the plants that people used yarrow not just to help with protection, but also to help cleanse someone's aura, and that different color yarrow will help with different places, right? So white yarrow is usually the one that helps with protecting someone's energy field. It's also used, was used when people would go into battle as a part of protection, but it's also used specifically for cleaning someone's aura and to strengthen the body. We also have pink yarrow. So when you see pink yarrow, we start talking about someone's emotions, right? Their emotional body. So their heart space, looking at their emotions and where they sit. And then you have yellow yarrow. Yellow yarrow is usually used when we're talking about our relationship, because yellow is also connected to our solar plexus, which is our relation, our power center in relation to others. So it's really important that we know that, when we just see one thing, it's not just one thing, right? Part of the intelligence is understanding how are we interpreting what they're telling us, right? That it's medicines for our physical body, but our emotional body and our spiritual body. And I like to always say that the earth is an ancestor and she has always been speaking to us. And so this is a part of our ancestral intelligence to really begin to understand what is happening with the earth and with our plant allies. And I always like to also say is that our relationship with plants isn't, we could, I could do without plants. Actually, we can't. We have a reciprocal relationship with them. If they go away, we go away. If we go away, they go away. That's how much it's important for us to become really good stewards and understanding the language of them so that we can ensure that we're cultivating them and cultivating that relationship well. Oh, Nicole says, my tea bag quote today says the plants have enough spirit to transform our limited vision. Yes, by Rosemary. That is a great one. I love Miss Gladstar. Thank you for sharing. It's it's on topic. So that's beautiful. Thank you for sharing that, Nicole. Thank you, Mama Amadoma. I hope that you can catch it. And please feel free to check back in with us a little later. So I want to talk about the language of flowers, right? Because we see them, we know that we're drawn to them, but sometimes we don't know why we're drawn to them. And so I want to talk about something that's called the windows of plant perception. And why it's important to talk about the windows of plant perception. These are the ways in which plants are communicating with us, right? The same way how we talk about the intelligence where if you put, and I do this with my plants as well, if I put a certain plant in a space, I can tell whether or not it likes it or not, right? Because that plant will either flourish or it won't grow new leaves. It won't move towards the sun. All of those things are indicators for us that it's letting us know where it would like to be. The windows of plant perception is also another way for us to be able to interpret plants. So the first window that I would love us to look at, and it's something that we see all the time, is color, right? Color lets us know where, why, how, what this plant is good for, what part of the body. Why? Because color is not just a range of what we see. It also indicates a part of our body or a part of our emotions that it's wanting to share with us. So for example, the example here under color is nasturtium. Nasturtium is a beautiful, bright flower. It usually grows in reds, oranges, and yellows. It is what I call a spicy flower. So it's an edible flower that can be eaten. I've had it in salads before. And then when we think about the essence or the intelligence of the flower, that particular flower helps us to think outside the box, right? That red, that passion, that orange, that yellow, connecting to our solar plexus again, is the idea of expansion and expansion in our mind. The idea that we're going to expand past what our normal habits or thought patterns are in order for us to move into a next space. So color is a really big piece, and understanding colors, understanding the color spectrum really helps us to understand what the plants are trying to tell us, right? Because there's some plants that only bloom in a very specific color. And there's some plants like roses that have an array of colors. And so all of those colors tell us something. White tells us something versus red. Yellow tells us something versus orange. Purple is a very beautiful color. It tells us our irises that come in purple, they're very much connected to the crown chakra. They're very much connected to creativity. And so that's how they're telling us about what's happening. And then thinking about your own intuitive self, when are there times where you're drawn to certain flowers or certain colors of flowers versus others? What's happening in your life at that time? What are the things that you may need support in? Because plants do that, right? That's a part of us being a part of the same ecosystem. Plants will show up for you the way that they need to show up for you. We won't even realize that they're showing up. I shared with someone one time that I had thought about or dreamt about, I think I had thought about or dreamt about lemon balm. I had dreamt about lemon balm. And, sometimes I have dreams about plants. They will just come to me and remind me that I need to be working with them. And so I dreamt about lemon balm and I was like, oh, well, I got to pick up some. And I know I had some in the house, but I went for a walk and literally saw lemon balm growing in different yards all along my walk. And I was like, okay, lemon balm, I got it. You're trying to tell me something. Let me get some and sit with you. That's the way they show up. You won't know why they're showing up, but sometimes it's the curiosity of, this is the third time I've seen this plant. Or, it's making me stop and pay attention to it. And my daughter, we went out for a walk the other day, and in our neighborhood, the plants are starting to come back. And so I not only pay attention to the flowers, but I also look at the trees, right? So I can see the trees starting to bud. And so we're trying to get from point A to point B. And she goes, this is going to be a whole flower plant photo shoot, isn't it? Because as I'm going, I'm taking pictures because I'm like, oh, wow, I'm watching this tree come into itself. And this is the first time I get to see it, right? Some of the trees are flowering now, but they will actually be green all summer. So this is the first time really getting a chance to look at it. So really pay attention to your environment. Really pay attention as you go on your walks or outside, or just going from place to place and seeing what stops you. Because color is something that will stop you. It'll pique your interest because our brains understand color in that way. So as we're walking, it's not just arbitrary that all of a sudden you've seen purple 4 times on your walk, or 4 times as you're walking to the train. And then all of a sudden, a purple hyacinth makes you stop, right? These are languages that plants are really trying to get us to understand. Another window of plant perception is shape, right? So shape tells us a lot about what type of flower it is. What type of energy does this flower bring? So I have it as an example, calla lily. Calla lilies are cupped. It is an interesting tech day because the system is telling me that the internet is good, but it keeps cutting off. So back to windows of plant perception. Thank you, Nicole, for giving me my cue line. I appreciate you. So we were talking about the shapes, and lilies are cupped. So cup shapes are important because cup shapes and cup shapes facing up tells us that it's a receptive flower. It tells us that it is typically will be known as a divine feminine flower. So, you can think about tulips, you can think about chime bells, you can think about even irises, right? All of them are facing up is the way in which they are, and that they're either shaped in a way in which it looks like they're receiving, right? So that's the first way to know that different lilies, what kind of energy are they bringing with you? Specifically, lilies in general, all of the lilies are all connected to divine feminine, lots of different ways. So, you have tiger lily, you have chocolate lily, you have mariposa lily, all of the different types of lilies help with the divine feminine. Another example of thinking about shape is when you think about sunflower. So as much as we want to connect sunflower with the divine feminine, it actually is a divine masculine flower. It protrudes forward, right? It faces forward. Its face does not have a space for receptivity. It stands boldly in where it is. And that is a sign of divine masculine, right? The ability to do. And in doing, it is always going to show off what that is. There's no place to receive on a sunflower. And so it's really important to look at that because these are also the ways in which flowers are going to tell us how we can use them. During the wintertime, I always say, it's helpful to use divine masculine flowers sometimes because we also sometimes need that push because during the wintertime, we're slowing down and sometimes you need that energy. We talk about using plants like ginger where it helps to warm the blood. It's the same thing about warming our psyche. We have to do that as well when we're working with the flowers. So shape plays a really important part of the way in which we're able to interpret flowers. Another place to think about is the environment. Where do flowers grow? Right? The example that I have here is lotus. Why is it important to pay attention to lotus? Lotus is known as a transformation flower. Why? Because it not only grows in the water, it grows from the mud, right? Where a plant grows tells us a lot about how to interpret its intelligence. That you can still have that beauty growing in water and mud tells us something about what that flower has to offer us. Environment is another place of perception. We also have folklore. So in this example, I'm using Joshua tree. Joshua tree typically grows out in the desert. It's usually by itself. But one of the things that's beautiful about seeing Joshua tree is that they actually grow near each other, right? So you'll see they grow in like these little patches, and it's really beautiful. And one of the things about Joshua tree to know is that Joshua Tree is known for helping to bring together family, right? I use it a lot in my practice around people who may be adopted, those who may have been disconnected from their family and want to reconnect. It's one of the flowers that really helps with this idea of reconnection with family, with earthly family. And so it's a folklore around Joshua Tree that brings that forward, but it actually is a lot of how the tree and the flowers of that tree work. And then the last part about the perception is botanical family, right? So understanding that the same way how we have our cousin, in your family, you have your cousins, and sometimes your cousins look more like your brother and sister than anybody else, is the same way how in the plant world, you have that as well, the botanical families. So lavender and mint are a part of the same botanical family. They do similar things, but they work on different parts of the body, right? So lavender tends to help us relax, whereas mint, if you drink mint or mint tea, it helps to actually speed up or help us to focus, right, in our mind. The same way how lavender you can use when your mind is overworked, peppermint helps you to get the mind going, right? So it's this way in which the botanical families kind of help us. Again, they're cousins. They help us to understand where they're working and how you can work with them together, or how you could even substitute them when you need to. And so these are the ways in which plants are telling us about themselves. They're telling us about themselves every day. They're saying, hey, look at me. Sometimes we're paying attention, sometimes we're not. So it's important that as we begin to gain this knowledge, that we become even more curious. And I want to say that working with flowers is not new, right? People hear me talk about it, I become really passionate, and I'm like, look, this is not a new thing. It is not a trend. It's about remembering, right? Again, I always tell folks, as we remember, we become and have the capacity to be able to take in more information, right? Before, you may have just walked past that plant. Now, something about that plant will make you curious and it'll make you stop. And that is enough for you to begin opening up your mind to this earth-based wisdom, right? And indigenous teachers and ancestral understandings know that there's sacredness in plants. There's sacredness in flowers. There's sacredness in their ability to keep ecosystems going, right? They show up not just for us, but they show up for the bees, they show up for the ants, they show up for so many others that need them. And also understanding that flowers are the end of a plant life cycle. So once it flowers, it begins to die. That plant is now getting ready to produce either fruit or get ready to go into a different cycle. The cycle may be a longer cycle than what we understand as getting ready to transition, but it is the ending of that cycle, because everything from that seed to the plant coming above ground to it actually moving into that bloom. Then from the bloom, depending on what kind of plant it is, and that bloom moves into the fruit gets picked, and then that goes into a different. So that's part of that cycle for that plant. And it's important for us to continue to understand that when we see the flowering, it's telling us something. Flowering is also interesting because that is also how some plants that usually do not flower tell us something is wrong. So for example, I have a snake plant that I've kept in my room. I think I've had this one. I've planted some of it outside of my room, but when I first got it, I got it right before COVID. It started growing really big inside of the pot, and I've had it for like almost 7, 8 years. And one of the things that is to be known is that if a snake plant flowers, which it typically does not flower, it's an indicator that that plant is stressed. I had to go and look it up. I had to go find out. I was like, why is this plant flowering? Because I've never seen a snake plant flower. One of the things about that particular plant is when it flowers, it's an indicator that it either needs to be transplanted into a bigger pot, or it is stressed and trying to tell you that it needs some care in order for it to continue to flourish. So I think that those are the knowledge pieces about us being able to interpret what's happening with the plant, to know that something is happening. The other piece to know about working with flowers and working with plants is that it's very intuitive, right? The information that we have is based on our rituals. It's based on what our ancestors passed down to us. It's based on us exploring, growing them, cultivating them, touching them, smelling them, our felt sense, and understanding, there's this presence that exists, that's existing right now, and it's trying to tell me something. And that we have the ability to do this interpretation, right? That our intuitive selves have the understanding in order to do this interpretation. And again, we talk about the reciprocal relationship we have with plants and flowers. Because there is reciprocity built into our everyday existence, we have reverence for them. They have reverence for us. There becomes a deeper listening, and we're able to really be able to tap into their intelligence. Any questions, any thoughts before we move into our flower essence? You guys know I get really, really geeky in this area. So if you have questions, please let me know. Or if anything stands out for you, please feel free to drop it in the chat. So the world that I love, flower essences. I am an herbalist, but I'm also a flower essence practitioner. And people say, well, what is the difference? We can use the entire plant, right? The entire plant can be used. You can use the root, you can use the leaves, you can use the bark, you can use the stamen, you can use the flower. But what's important about the flower? What makes it different than any of the other parts? Not that it's just beautiful and pretty and it's telling us things by the way it grows and where it grows and the colors that it grows in, the shape that it grows in. It is also the place of the energetic imprint of this plant. So as we talked about plant intelligence at the very beginning, we talked about what we observe, the plants that are around us are from the first seed of time, that they are actually sharing with us all of that information. When they talk about DNA and they talk about the fact that this information is encrypted into our DNA, it's encrypted into the plants. So what we observe in them blossoming and them creating and having these opportunities to bloom is that intelligent. And so the flowers are that, they hold the energetic imprint of the plant. It's not just this beautiful thing that shows up. It is the highest pinnacle point of the plant when it flowers. And so when we into the flower, we're tapping into that energy. So the question becomes, what is the difference between flower essences, herbal extracts, tinctures, essential oils? All of these things come from plant. I get really passionate. So if you got questions, put it into the chat. So what makes flowers and flower essences differently? All of the different parts of the plants also works on different parts of our bodies, our understanding. Flower essences in particular works on what we call the etheric self. The energy of flowers and flower essences, well, I'll talk a little bit more about what they are, works on our emotional body. It works on our mindsets. It works on us creating new pathways in our brain, what they call neuroplasticity. For a long time, it was thought that once you learn yourself, once you are a certain way, once you have a certain pattern in your brain, you can never change it. It has been proven that it is not true, that plants and certain rituals have a way of being able to move us from, experiencing trauma to being healed. How does that happen? Because part of what happens is that we have experiences in our lives that get locked into the body and get locked into the brain. And so what happens is our brain, our logic brain, those of you who've heard of me talk about the three brains, right? So our logic brain acts as a repository of our experiences. And the experience is not just from when you experience it, it's remembering that your body also interprets what you experience. So the body says, oh, this doesn't feel good. The brain goes into the file cabinet and it says, oh, is this feeling like this? Because if it feels like this is going to be her response, right? Because it's already programmed in. Part of our healing is being able to understand that we've had these experiences, but we actually can control our responses by building our capacity to heal, right? By building new pathways in our brains to be able to interpret this information and then experience life different. So this is the place where flower essences works. And I love it. It's such a powerful medicine. This is one of the reasons why when I got into it, I'll share it really quickly. My daughter is now 13. So 13 years ago, after I gave birth. I have worked with children my entire life, teaching, working in the classroom, working as an artist, and I gave birth to my first daughter. Yes, a lot of things were going on at that time, but motherhood is, I always tell people, motherhood is the only true hood, and it's a one hood that will change you for life. You will never be the person you were before. And if you are willing to be a part of that evolution, it will definitely bring you into a different place in your understanding. And so, as she was born, I've shared with you all many times, I was in other iterations of my life. I was a dancer, I was a performer, I performed on Broadway, I toured with dance companies. So I'm very much into my body, a very kinesthetic learner. I understand what my body is telling me. And so she may have been about 3 months, maybe 4 months. I was starting to usually, my tradition, the first 40 days or so, we don't go outside. But I was starting to move and go outside. So that means that we must have been past the 40-day mark, which would have put her at about a month and a half to almost 2 months. I started recognizing that my body was starting to stiffen. First, it started with a little stiffness, right? So, like, I felt, oh, I got a stiff neck. And I thought that, well, that'll be it. I was still going to acupuncture. So I figured that, through acupuncture, it would keep moving things around. But it got worse. So it was my neck and then my arm. And from my arm, it went to my hip. From my hip, it went all the way down to my toes. I couldn't lift my arm. I couldn't move my neck. My whole left side was starting to shut down. And I was like, okay, I don't know what this is, but it don't feel good. So I went to my acupuncturist, who was also a flower essence therapist. And she also is one of the people who trained me. And so that day she said, this doesn't seem like it is all physical. I think it's more emotional. Let's talk a little bit about what you've been experiencing. And I shared, I'm very happy. I was very blessed. My daughter was a very happy baby. We're able to transition into a lot of different things. But the reality is, this is the first time of me being a mother and taking on this role, a role that I will never be able to put down. And I think that emotions that have gone on with her father and my own family had really taken a toll on my body. And so she said, I think that I want you to take some flower essences. And I said, okay. What do they do? She said, it's going to help you. And to this day, I can tell you the flowers that I chose, and the flower to this day that has helped me through a lot of different things as I continue to learn the flowers. One of the things that came up as I took the flower essences is that my body was shutting down because there were some emotions that I had not come to terms with. One of them was my role, not just as a woman, but as a mother, but all of the things that I had built for myself were going to change. The person who I was no longer. Not because I didn't want to, but because I had evolved. The experience of childbirth had evolved me. And it was a physical evolution that occurred, and my mind hadn't yet caught up to it. And then there were things that I had not said, like, OMG, this is hard stuff. And, we're taught in Western culture to hold that in, and you got to be a good mother. And I was like, this is stupid. That breastfeeding hurts. I remember the first day I said that to one of my elders, she was like, okay, Renee, let's talk about it. I know we're supposed to do it. It is a beautiful thing, but I just want to explain to everyone that in no book does it say that this hurts. Like, it hurts for real, not for fake, for real. And I go on to say that my daughter, then she nursed until she was 4 years old. However, these are the things that I learned as I started to express them. My body started to come. I started to understand what was going on. And it was flower essence that did that. It was flower essences that helped me to get to the bottom of what hadn't been said, what trauma was coming up that I hadn't thought about. And so that's where it works. I love flower essences because it's a very subtle medicine. So many times you may not even realize something is happening, and then you'll go back and witness yourself and go, oh, something's changed. And it's one of the things that I love about flower essences. So it's this idea that we're taking the energetic imprint. It's like we're doing a download from that flower. We're using water because water holds memory. So water is the ability for us to take that information. And, if you ever think about having one of those jump drives and plugging it into the computer and then downloading information, that's what water is doing for us. We're taking the flower, we're putting it into the water, which would be our jump drive. And then we're going to use the sun or the moon to help embody that imprint into the water. And why do I say the sun or the moon? Those are two of our biggest celestial bodies. and they have different ways of bringing out the intelligence that is in the flower. For example, jasmine are moon flowers. So when we make jasmine flower essences, we have to do it in moonlight, typically during the full moon. So we will put it into the water and we sit it under the moonlight. And you will know when flower essences are ready or when the water has taken in that imprint, because the actual flower itself becomes translucent in the water. And that's when you know, oh, it's ready, right? It's ready. So the medicine itself is subtle, but the process is not, right? And if you can imagine that there are so many flowers in the world, so there are so many ways in which we can connect to them. There's so much information that we can learn from them. And it is this amazing apothecary that we can continue to understand just by learning their language, just by being able to interpret them, that they are sharing with us a frequency, especially during the season as they're blooming, that's going to help us to be able to move into the next season for ourselves. So I'm going to take a pause there. Thank you, Mama Deborah. She's sharing that. It's been very informative. This is the place that I love to be. And yes, I love teaching about flower essences very much, very, very much. Thank you for Mama Deborah. Yes, it was serious. It stopped, but it was that pain that I was like, so nobody was going to tell me that this was the first, it was going to hurt that first, second, third time. Okay. All right. No problem. But I learned, and I learned that part of what was also causing my body to shut down is that I had, and we are taught so many times to not share what we're experiencing. Not that it is good, bad, or indifferent, but we actually need to express it. And so that is what my body was asking me to do. It was like, don't hold this stuff in. You got to say it unfiltered. And if people don't like it, that's okay. But you got to say it. And so that was one of the things that it taught me. That was one of the things. The flower that I used at that time is called Indian pink. And it's used many times to really help with, it's a beautiful pink flower that has like these blue stamen in the inside. So it makes you focus in. And so one of the things that it helps you to do is to think about, of all the things and all that's happening around you, how do you pinpoint what you need to focus on? How do you pinpoint how to make quiet the chaos so that you can do what you need to do? And so that was one of the ways in which I was able to kind of come out and create new pathways for myself during that. And it was flower essences. And so I definitely do that now in my work. I love to work mainly on the fertility side, but also on the postpartum side to really help new mothers as we are evolving in this process. Flower essences is one of the tools that I use. Mama Amadoma, we will definitely miss you, but I thank you for being here. And please definitely catch the replay. I'm so happy you were able to join. And I will do more. As you know, I love talking about flowers, so I will definitely do more. So we talk about how do flower essences work and where do they work? So as I shared before, flower essences, unlike physical medicine. So what's the difference between flower essences and herbal medicine? I always like to share an example of someone comes to me, a client comes to me and they say, I want to lose weight. From an herbal perspective, as an herbalist, we can look at the different herbs that will help you to either drain fat in your body, help you to curb your eating, remove waste. Like those are the places where many times our weight is being carried in the body. And so different herbs can kind of help with that flow. But as a flower essence practitioner, I would then come to it a little differently, because what I'm going to be most concerned about is not how your body is losing weight, but why aren't you able to stay on a regimen that would allow you to do so? What in your mind? What beliefs about yourself? Your words that stop you from being able to. All right, we are back. Thank you, Nicole, for being, she's in show business. She knows how to make sure I keep my line. So before our eruption, we were talking about the difference between herbalism and essences, right? So someone comes to me and says, I want to lose weight. And so as an herbalist, we're going to give them all the things that can help them lose weight, right? That's going to help them drain fat from the body, help them curb their diet, help them curb their eating, all of that. As a flower essence practitioner, we're going to look at what are the beliefs behind why you're not able to keep a regimen, right? What are the things that are stopping you, or what are the beliefs that you have that are stopping you from being able to see yourself as worthy, as beautiful, as someone who can have the body and the reality that you believe in, right? These are the places that help us to understand the difference between flower essences and herbalism, because they aren't the same. And it's really, again, the place where flower essences works is in this subtle and subconscious body. So it helps with emotional patterns, right? Long held feelings and reactive cycles. And it helps us when we're ready to shift. You can't shift from something until you are ready to do so, until you're ready to face it, until you're ready to go back in that memory and interpret it a little differently. But our ability to interpret is based on our own capacity, our own emotional expansion, right? So emotional patterns is something that flower essences helps us with. It helps us to look at beliefs and stored experiences. What stored experiences do we have in our subconscious mind that either we inherited or are part of our daily understanding of ourselves that no longer serve us? So there becomes this time when it's important for us to begin to release that it's holding us back, because that is a platform that our brain goes to automatically in order for us to function. It also talks a little bit about our nervous system, right? Being able to bring our nervous system into restoration and a sense of calm. So, flower essences really will help. One of the essences that I love when people choose it, or I put it in a formula and I watch it work, is banana. Banana is one of my favorite flower essences. It's considered the humble servant, right? It helps us to continue to serve without us getting caught up in the minutia of all the things that people do that would want us to not be able to do that work, right? I give it to folks who are working in community. I give it to folks who are caregiving. Why? Because if we get caught up in the minutia, we will not do the work. Every little thing will bother us. We got to go to work and our coworker likes to chew with their mouth open, and that is going to annoy us, which means we're not going to get no work done. So banana is one of those things that helps us to quiet the noise of all the things that could stop us from staying focused and putting us on the path of staying focused and being more open and compassionate with others and ourselves. And compassion for ourselves is important, because in order for us to show compassion, we have to be compassionate. And so banana is one of those flowers that helps with that. Flower essences also helps us with our intuition and awareness, right? Opening up our receptivity for inner guidance and spiritual perception. So our ability to remove the conditioning of what we have been told to be aware of, and being aware of the things that are coming into our understanding, because we now have the capacity to see it. I kid you not, you all would now go into the world today and see flowers very differently than you did yesterday. And that is because by us having this conversation, we've now increased the capacity and the awareness that you have. And that's going to allow you to interpret the world around you differently. And so that is what also flower essences helps us with. So we're going to continue pushing forward, and we're going to do a quick flower exploration. And so flower explorations for me are really our ability to observe what's happening with plants, observe what's happening with flowers. And even through pictures, we can begin to have an understanding around what information they want to tell us. It's called a process called active imagination, right? It's our doorway for us into plant intelligence. And so I'm going to share 3 flowers. I'm going to ask you to take a moment. We're going to take a breath and see which one calls to you. And you're going to take a couple of minutes to do what we call an active imagination conversation. You can either write it down, means that you're going to ask a question and then allow yourself to free write the information that comes to you, or you're going to have an actual conversation. I'm curious about such and such, like whatever question comes up, and allowing you to have that conversation with the plant or with the flower. So take a moment to find a comfortable position for yourself. If you have your notebook and you want to write, or if you want to just have the conversation, we're literally going to do this for about 30 to 45 seconds. And so I'm going to place 3 flowers on the screen. Take a minute to close your eyes. Take a deep breath in and breathe out. Again, deep breath in and breathe out. Last time, deep breath in and breathe. And as you open your eyes, allow your eyes to settle on one of the flowers. And take a moment to see what makes you curious about the flower. And I want you to ask the flower, either writing it down or in your conversation with it now, what message do you have for me? In this season, what message do you have for me? Take about 5 more seconds. Good. And if you're still in that conversation, take a moment to thank the flower. Take a deep breath in and breathe out. And so I would ask, did any of you all either get a message or something was curious or you were drawn to a particular flower? If you would like, you can pop it into the chat. And I'd like to talk a little bit about these 3 flowers. Oh, so Mama Adoma says that the yellow flower spoke to her. What did it say? What about it made it curious, or what message did it have for you? Beautiful. Amadoma says, to be bright, allow yourself to burst with energy. Don't take a back seat. Excellent. You're going to love what this, when I tell you what the flower is and what it's used for, it's going to be so in sync. Anyone else want to share before I reveal what the flowers are? That is amazing and so on point. Boop. So this yellow flower is called Medea. I call it the focus flower. So if you notice the petals, it has multiple petals and multiple layers. It's facing, as we had talked about the shape before, right? So it is not a cup shape, but it actually faces and protrudes into the world. So your message about don't take a back seat and to be that, be bright and be forward and be bold is that, right? It's that opportunity to sit in the world. It's also, as we shared before, it's a divine masculine flower. I see Nicole also had this flower. So we're talking about Medea, right? It dries you, it grows you, it draws you in. She says, it's radiant was the first word that comes to me, and shine brightly, be bold, courageous. Both of you had similar words. It's beautiful. Inner light and be ready to be seen. Natasha also shared the yellow flower, right? It caught you right away. And the message that you got was more stillness and it's time to move. Amazing. So all of these messages track with Medea. Medea, as I shared before, is what I call the focus flower, right? You can tell by the way in which it is shaped and the way that it is what we call protruding into the world, right? It's standing firmly in the world. And so, like sunflower, it's telling us to stand forward. It's telling us to be seen. As many of you have said, it's telling us to shine. It has many layers to it, right? But you focus in on the center, the orange, because it is also allowing us to focus, which is why it's called the focus, why I call it the focus flower. Medea is very helpful with us not just initiating, but staying focused on things that we're working on. If we make intentions around what we want to focus and then we take this flower, it helps us to kind of create the pathway for it to be achieved. Other times when we feel like we're scattered and we need to come into focus, Medea is also one of those flowers that helps. And one of the reasons why it helps it focus is why it is sitting on the side of divine masculine, which means it is about doing. Right? It's one thing about a flower being, but it's another thing about it saying you need to do. So look at how all of your messages were in line. All of them said, move, move, move. It said, don't take a back seat. It said, burst of energy. All of these are movement interpretations that the flower is already giving you. Yes? I told y'all, this right here, flowers, talk about them all day. But amazing. Yes, I agree with you, Nicole. Ashe. So in this moment, you all got to choose 3 different flowers. You both all chose the same flower, different messages, all in the same range, though, telling us the same thing. That is the interpretation of flowers, right? This is how flowers are telling us about themselves. And this is just from you focusing on seeing a picture of the flower. Imagine you seeing it in person. Imagine you taking the actual flower essence. So these are the ways in which flowers really help us. These are the ways in which having flowers in our presence, being able to have and cultivate flowers in our home, bringing flowers home for yourself and giving yourself flowers, learning more about why you're connected to certain flowers become very important. Thank you all so much for sharing the way that you did, because it told us that we are all divinely connected and we are very much in that space right now. So we're going to do a quick activation, and then I promise you I'm going to release you for the day. And I pray that you get to see so many flowers today and that they talk to you and they allow for you to have an amazing experience with them today. We're going to take a moment to activate our understanding of flowers in our third eye, in our mind's eye. And it's really going to also connect to us seeing ourselves as flowers, seeing ourselves as what is going to bloom, right? And in this moment, we're going to take our intention to envision ourselves as from seed to blooming. And so I want you to take a moment to take a deep breath. You can close your eyes. I want you to take a moment to rub your hands together. Just move some energy a little bit. And place one hand on your third eye and one hand on your heart. And then warm it up one more time. And this time you're going to place your hands on your stomach or on your solar plexus. So we want to wake up those 3 brains. We want them to work together and collaborate in this meditation. And so now take a moment and you're going to close your eyes. And I want you to see yourself as a seed. I want you to give the seed a purpose, an intention. What are you intending to bloom in this season? See yourself as a seed. As you see yourself as the seed, you are now taking the intention of being planted. What does it mean to be planted? Right? You are intentionally taking yourself and putting yourself into soil that has been cultivated so that you can bloom, so that you can flourish. What does that soil contain? Does it contain joy? Does it contain happiness? Does it contain people that are around you that can support you? Does it contain resources? What does the soil have to contain in order for you to flourish in this season? So you as a seed, you have now given yourself this intention. I want you to imagine yourself being planted, feeling yourself being pushed into the soil that's being cultivated to ensure that you will flourish. Feel the earth surround you. Feel the earth give you the bed that you need in order for you to flourish. Sit in that for a minute, in that intention that you want to see bloom. During this time that you are under the earth, that you are cultivating, that you are taking in the nutrients, you can feel yourself being watered. You can feel yourself receiving plant food. You can feel the sun starting to activate pieces of you that will allow for you to emerge. And so, very slowly, in your mind's eye, begin to see the inner part of your seed getting ready to sprout. It's slowly breaking through the hardness of the shell of the seed, and it's beginning to travel through the earth. It's traveling. And for the first time, that first little part of the seedling is feeling the sun on it. You're feeling the sun on you. And you're continued to be watered. You're continued to be cultivated. You're continued to be spoken to. You're continued to know all the things that you said that you need to flourish are coming to you without delay. And so I want you to continue to grow. Feel the stem growing. Feel your leaves growing. Feel the expansion that happens as you break through from the earth, knowing that this is one of the hardest things that you will do. The second thing is when it's time to bloom. But you are going to continue to envision yourself. You envision what your leaves feel like. You envision what the wind feels like as you expanding. This is a moment of expansion. So think about that intention that you had in the seed and watching it expand in this moment. And you become bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger. And now it's time for the bud to show up on you, on the plant. Choose a spot. Be intentional about whether it's one flower that blooms or many flowers that bloom. And find that energy, because this is the energy around blooming that people forget. This is the most heightened amount of information that will bloom. And so you're in the bud stage and the sun is on you and you're being watered and you have the right nutrients and you've cultivated a space that's going to allow you to bloom. What does blooming look like for you? Not just you as a plant, but you in your life, in your world. What does it look like for you? So I want you to take a moment to take a deep breath in. And when you breathe out, I want you to see that flower blooming. Take a deep breath in and breathe out slowly. This is the energy, consistent, pulling from the bottom of the root inside the soil. You can feel those roots pulling forward and pulling energy up and beginning to bloom. What color are you? What type of shape have you chosen? How does this connect to what you want to, how you want to be seen in the world right now? Continue to breathe, continue to bloom. And as you take a deep breath in and breathe out, you've completed your blooming. Now, I want you to take a moment before we close this part of the ritual to witness yourself. What do you look like in this moment? What color are you? Are you feeling the wind? How are you feeling the sun? What feels beautiful about that type of expansion? How do you want to be seen? What do you want to be known for? These are all of our blooming and our becoming. Take a moment to sit right here and witness yourself. You've bloomed. How beautiful. How do you want to be seen in the world? Do you have freckles? Do you have vibrant colors? How do you tell the world who you are? And take a deep breath in and breathe out. Take a deep breath in and breathe out. Last time, deep breath in and breathe out. And when you are ready, you may open your eyes. And if you would like to share a little bit about who you are and how you bloomed and what you look like, that would be beautiful because I know that you all felt it as well. So how was your blooming? What came to mind first? What colors did you decide? Did you have unique markers? How does it feel in your body to think about that intention that you're working on? I'll give a few second moments here so that we can all catch up. So one of the interesting things that came to me as I was And we're back. Hi, everyone. Thank you so much, Nicole, for being our prompt. So, yes, what came to me was a pink flower. Fuchsia actually is the color. And the shape was very much a shape of a lily, but my diamonds were like purplish green, which I thought was very interesting. And I had freckles. So that's why I brought up, do you have freckles? Do you have spots? But there were these freckles that were like yellowish around the flower. Totally was able to see my intention come all the way forward and thinking about what that color, going to do some more research about why that color came to me. And I have a lot of colors that I love, but that was one of the colors that came. If you have a color or something that came up for you and you want to share, now would be the time. We're going to continue to be diligent and explore and get through what we need to get through today. Nothing is going to stop us. It says your patience is needed and diligence is required. So that's what's being called in today. So thank you all so much for your patience. Natasha shares, my blooming was beautiful. The color of my blooming was fuchsia and bright yellow with multiple layers. I felt the sun shining brightly on my petals, and I stood confidently, knowing that my roots are anchored. It felt very beautiful and supportive. Thank you so much for sharing, Natasha. I'm really happy that it was beautiful for you. It was beautiful for me too. Like I said, I was facilitating and doing it at the same time, and I was like, whoa. Just really so think about that you can use that meditation anytime that you want to really feel yourself grounded, but also imagining yourself blooming, because a part of that also allows us to create a new interpretation in our brain around how we connect what we're trying to do and our own visibility and how we need it to look. So it's really important that we start using these also as our tools for blooming and for creating visibility for ourselves in this season. Thank you so much, Natasha, for sharing. Please feel free to share, and I'll definitely want to come back. I do want to keep us going because I know we've been here for a minute. I thank you all for being here with us today. Always excited to be in community. We're going to continue growing our community, but we're also going to take ourselves offline and come in person. So there are going to be a couple of opportunities as we move forward for us to connect together. We'll also still have the virtual option, but we want to continue to begin connecting. So I put together a couple of tools for you to continue in your blooming process. Some of you may have this, but if you don't, I will send it in the follow-up email. The Healing Power of Flowers. This is a free ebook that I wrote that connects us to the understanding of flowers and how they connect us to the different types of rest. Right? So many times we have been told we just need to rest. But did you know that there are 7 different types of rest? And so these 7 types really help us to understand where in our lives is rest needed and what type of rest is needed so that we can be at our best self. So this book is centered around the restorative aspect of rest and how flowers and flower essences can assist us with that. We also have our flower essence consultations and the Divine Collection. Many of you are familiar with the Divine Collection. We are currently in April, which means we are focused on progress. And so if you are a part of the Soul Soil Collective or are interested in learning more about the work that we do there, we have a self-paced module that we tap into every month that really helps us to understand our own ways of being in the world and then being able to kind of translate that into our own becoming. The flower essence consultation, as well as working with the Divine Collection. And also I do personal essences as well. So you can get your own customized essence as well. Since we have had the Divine Collection for exactly a year and a half now, it's been to market. I want to also continue to encourage us. It's a great entry point for working with flower essences if it is your first time working with them. I'm excited to share. Folks have asked me many times if I would begin teaching intro flower essence course. And so we are ready to begin our 6-week intro to flower essence course. This course is set up slightly different. So if you really love the things that we were talking about the flowers, this will go a little bit deeper into the practice, right? Really developing a fluency around the flower essences and how they work, hands-on embodiment, meaning actually studying a flower, doing a flower study, being able to learn the essences. So I will cultivate 12 to 15 essences that we will all kind of really work hard on being able to understand and how to work with them, and being able to understand how to integrate flower essences into our everyday existence and how it's very helpful for our rituals. There are different ways to go about this class. You can do it as a self-paced module, which means that you do it on your own pace. It'll have its own workbook and videos that go with it. And then you also have the one that we will be meeting once a week for 6 weeks. There will be assignments. We'll get to actually do some medicine making, like doing your first flower essence from an actual flower, but then also being able to use essences or understand the essences that are out there that are already being produced and how to put those together. Not yet for formulas, but just really getting a basic understanding. And then one of the other pluses of this particular course is that I will also give an opportunity where I will cultivate an actual kit for you. So of the essences that we work with, 8 to 10 essences that you can begin to build your own flower essence practice, flower essence tools for yourself. So I'm very excited about it. I will definitely share it in our follow-up email at the end of the session. Any questions, any thoughts that you all have? We are at the end of our session. Again, I thank you all so much for your patience, for your endurance, for you being here. I'm always honored to be able to do this work. And I thank you all for spending this time with me. I want you to remember that you are blooming, and it's not about someday. You're blooming now. The fact that you were here, the fact that you took the time to listen and do is a part of your blooming. So if you need some assistance, something comes up for you, feel free to reach out. I thank you all, and I wish you an amazing day. I pray that the flowers will talk to you today, and that you will just be, they will be in your world and you will be in their world, and you will really begin to really understand that the earth is an ancestor and we have to continue to take good care of it.